Every signal needs a receiver. This is not theology. This is physics. A tower can broadcast a message at perfect clarity, at perfect strength. And if the receiver is switched off, the message will never arrive. Not because the transmission failed, because the reception did. Chosen one. God has been broadcasting. Not was, not might be, has been. Present tense, active, unbroken, in the pattern of your repeated circumstances, in the dream that keeps coming back with the same weight, in the conversation that landed deeper than conversation should have, in that moment, small and almost invisible, when you stopped in the middle of a perfectly ordinary afternoon and felt a gap you could not explain, and then immediately reached for your phone. He has been transmitting a message specifically encoded for you, for who you are, where you are, and what you are being called to. But here is what no one told you. Your receiver got disrupted. Not by spiritual failure, not by distance, not by anything you did or did not do. By noise. By the most sophisticated distraction system in human history. One that profits from your inability to be still. One that has systematically fractured your attention and in doing so, buried the very faculty you were given to receive divine signal. Now feel your shoulders. Are they tense, pulled up toward your ears, like you have been carrying something you cannot put down? Feel your chest. Is there something sitting there? Not quite anxiety, not quite sadness, just this weight you have learned to function around, because you have been carrying it so long you forgot what it felt like to set it down. That tension is not weakness. That is not a spiritual problem. That is the feeling of a person whose receiver has been overwhelmed by static. The call never stopped. Today, you learn to hear it again. Before I take you into the heart of what I want to show you, I need to ask something of you. Stay with me until the very end of this video. Because by the time we finish, you are going to understand exactly why this silence has felt so real and why it is not what you think it is. You are going to discover something specific about what is actually happening inside your brain when you cannot hear clearly. And you are going to leave here with something practical, something grounded, something you can use today to begin restoring what has been disrupted. Every minute of this matters. Stay with me. Now let me ask you something honest. When did you first start believing that God went quiet? I am not asking about a dramatic moment, just something quieter than that. A belief that settled in over time, almost without you noticing. Maybe it came during a long season of prayer that felt like it went somewhere and came back empty. Maybe it came after a promise that did not arrive the way you expected, and the waiting stretched into something heavy, and the heaviness turned into a silence you did not know how to interpret. Maybe it came late at night when you sat in the stillness and heard nothing, and the nothing felt so loud that it started to feel like an answer you were terrified to name. And so the belief settled in, not as a crisis, just as a quiet, persistent background feeling that maybe something changed, that maybe the connection you used to sense was harder to find than it once was. I need you to hear this clearly. That belief is wrong. Not wrong in the way of easy reassurance. Not wrong in the way of someone patting you on the shoulder and saying it will be fine. Wrong in the way of, you have been receiving transmissions this entire time, and you have been misidentifying them as coincidence, as mood, as things that do not count. Consider this with me for a moment. Think about the dream that woke you in the middle of the night. The one that left you lying in the dark with a feeling that hung around for days, even though you could not explain where it came from. Think about the stranger who said something in passing that hit you like a key turning in a lock, words that arrived from nowhere with a weight that ordinary conversation simply does not carry. Think about the pull you felt toward a direction that made no logical sense, and how many times you talked yourself out of following it because you could not justify it on paper. Think about the situation that has repeated in your life, with different faces and different circumstances, but the same essential lesson underneath every single time. Think about the peace that arrived unexpectedly in a season that had no business feeling peaceful, the kind of peace that surprised you because you had not asked for it and could not explain it. Those were not accidents. Those were not your imagination working overtime. Those were transmissions, active, specific, persistent. Your receiver was working. You just did not have the framework to hold what was coming through. And to understand why, I want to take you somewhere. I want to take you to a cave. The man who went into that cave had just done something extraordinary. He had called fire down from heaven in front of hundreds of people. Real, undeniable, unmistakable fire. One of the most dramatic divine demonstrations in all of recorded history. And then, almost immediately after, this same man ran. He hid in the wilderness. He was depleted in a way that went deeper than tired. And by his own words, he asked to die. God went to find him, not in the way you might expect. First came an earthquake. The ground split. The air shook. The kind of event that commands every nerve in your body to pay attention. The man did not move. Then came fire. Consuming, undeniable. The man stayed still. And then, after the earthquake and after the fire, there was a still, small voice. And the man rose. Stay with that for a moment. The most spiritually activated person in the region, the man who had literally just witnessed the miraculous, missed the earthquake and missed the fire, and heard the whisper. Not because he was spiritually weak, because the still small voice does not compete with earthquakes. It does not escalate its frequency to match the chaos around you. It holds its note, steady and constant and patient, and it waits for a moment of stillness to arrive. And the world we are living in right now is not designed to create that moment for you. We live inside a permanent earthquake, not physical, not dramatic, but relentless. Notifications arriving before your feet touch the floor in the morning. News cycles designed to keep your nervous system in a low-grade state of alarm. Social media architectures built to hold your attention in fragments so small that stillness becomes uncomfortable. Silence starts to feel like something has gone wrong, and the space where the voice has been living gets smaller and smaller until you stop expecting to find anything there. This is not an accident. The system that profits from your distraction has no interest in you becoming still enough to hear what has been waiting for you. But I need you to hear this next part without guilt and without adding it to the list of things you should have done differently. The difficulty you have had hearing is not a reflection of your commitment. It is not a judgment on your faith. It is the predictable result of a specific, documented, measurable thing that has been happening inside your brain. And once you understand what it is, you will never interpret the silence the same way again. Your brain operates on different frequency states. You already know this in some way, even if you have never thought about it in these terms. There is the state you are in when you are anxious and reactive, managing 100 things at once, when your thoughts move fast and scattered, and every sound feels like another demand. Neuroscientists call this high beta activity. For most adults living in the modern world, this is the default state. This is the water they swim in every day. And it is also the state in which deep knowing becomes nearly impossible. Then there is another state, quieter, rarer, the state that young children live in naturally, the one that makes a 7-year-old a miraculous learning machine, filling them with creativity and wonder, and a kind of intuitive clarity that most adults spend their whole lives trying to find again. The state you brush against when you are deep in something and the hours disappear and answers arrive without effort. The state that sits underneath breakthrough, underneath the sudden knowing that something is true before you can explain why you know it. Scientists call this gamma activity, and what researchers at MIT, Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, and Columbia have spent decades discovering is this. Gamma is not just about performance. Gamma is the brainwave frequency associated with deep insight, with pattern recognition that goes beyond what conscious thought can reach, with the kind of clarity that arrives whole and complete in a single moment. And here is what I want you to truly receive. Every major spiritual tradition in human history separated by thousands of years and thousands of miles from each other, described the same inner condition in which divine communication became most clear. The noise fell away, the mind became still and alert at the same time, and something came through. They were describing gamma. Your brain has a God-given reception frequency, and modern life has been systematically suppressing it. Neuroscientists call this the decline effect, the gamma activity that floods a child's mind, the same frequency that gives a young child the ability to learn with astonishing speed, to wake up curious and alive to everything, to sense the world as full of meaning, begins to diminish as overstimulation accumulates year after year. By adulthood, for most people, it has been buried so deeply under the noise of daily life that accessing it requires significant effort or significant stillness, and modern life offers neither. Your receiver did not break. It was buried. And every prayer that felt like it went nowhere, every night of reaching toward something sacred and coming up empty, every moment of spiritual dryness that made you quietly wonder if something was wrong with you, that was not proof of abandonment. That was the signal arriving to a receiver too saturated with static to hold it. Let me make this specific. That thing you do late at night when everything finally goes quiet and something inside you stirs, and for just a moment you feel like you are almost on the edge of something important, and then your phone lights up and it is gone. That was contact being attempted. The knowing you felt in your gut about a direction or a decision, the one you could not justify logically, but that felt unmistakably real, before you talked yourself out of it. That was signal breaking through, the inexplicable peace that settled over a situation that had no reason to feel peaceful, the sudden clarity that arrived in a quiet moment when you were not trying to figure anything out. That was your receiver working, briefly and beautifully, in a moment of lower noise. You have been receiving more than you know. The problem is not the transmission. The problem is the static between you and what has been trying to reach you. And here is where everything shifts. Because if the decline effect is real and documented and measurable, then the question that follows is obvious. Is there a way to reverse it? Is there a way to restore gamma, to clear the static, to bring the receiver back online without years of intense practice or equipment that costs more than a car? The answer exists. The science behind it is going to reframe everything you thought was required to finally hear clearly, and I am going to show you exactly what it is when we continue. The call has been going out the entire time. Stay with me. In 1996, a neuroscientist named Dr. Robert Lake began a research project that would take him 34 years to complete. The question driving that project was the same one we have been circling together. Can the brain's reception frequency be genuinely restored, reliably, quickly, without requiring the kind of radical life change that most people simply cannot sustain? He was not approaching this from a spiritual direction. He was approaching it as pure neuroscience. His colleagues at institutions including MIT, Princeton, Harvard, and Stanford had already mapped what happened in the brain during states of peak clarity. They had documented the gamma frequency. They had measured its decline in modern adults, and the natural next question was, how do you bring it back? What they discovered is something called brain entrainment. The brain, they found, is not locked into a fixed state. It is responsive. It is designed to synchronize. When exposed to precisely calibrated sound frequencies, the brain gently begins to match the frequency of what it is hearing, not through effort, not through conscious intention, but automatically, the way a string vibrates when the note it is tuned to is played nearby. And when those sounds are engineered to carry the gamma signature, the brain follows. Dr. Lake spent decades refining this, studying what combinations of frequency and timing produce the most reliable shift into the reception state. Working with research centers across multiple countries, reviewing decades of peer-reviewed data, and eventually he compressed everything he had learned into a single 7-minute audio track. He called it The genius song. You put on headphones, you close your eyes, you listen for 7 minutes. That is the entire practice. No effort required, no belief required, no perfect conditions needed. The technology does what the technology was built to do, and when it is finished, something in your brain has shifted. The noise drops, the static clears, and the frequency that has been yours since before you were born, the God-given reception channel that was designed to receive what your life has been trying to tell you, comes back online. Over 18,000 people have now used this, not as a one-time experiment, but as a daily practice. And what they consistently describe is not a manufactured experience, it is the opposite. It is removal of interference, it is the return of a clarity they did not realize they had lost. I am not presenting this as a product. I am presenting this as the most direct and scientifically grounded answer to the question we have spent this entire video asking. We have talked about a receiver that was buried. This is the practice that unburied it. The original price for this track is $49, less than a single hour with a biofeedback specialist, a fraction of the cost of the neurofeedback machines used in clinical settings. But for those watching this video, Dr. Lake has made it available for $39. That price does not exist on Amazon. It does not exist on any search result or any other platform. It is available only through the link in the description and the pinned comment of this video. For $39, you receive the core 7-minute track plus 4 additional resources, an audio track for younger ones in your home, a foundational personal growth text that predates and inspired much of what you know about mindset and intention, a guided visualization covering the 4 major areas of life, and a practical printable guide for the 5 habits that most consistently support what you are building. Everything comes with a 100% money-back guarantee. No time limit, no explanation needed, no questions asked. You try it, you feel nothing different, you receive every dollar back. One more thing I need to say clearly, because it matters. There are now counterfeit versions of this track circulating online. Sites using the Genius Song name with none of the actual brain entrainment technology embedded inside them, just ordinary sound with no clinical foundation and no real effect. The only way to receive the genuine product with the full technology, all 4 bonus resources, and the money-back guarantee is through the link I have placed in the description and the pinned comment below. Do not search for it anywhere else. What you receive matters. Now, the tool is only as powerful as the understanding behind it, and I want to take you to the truth that makes everything we have covered in this video snap into place. The truth that changes the way you see yourself. The truth that recontextualizes every moment of silence, every season of waiting, every night of reaching into what felt like nothing. You were not designed to miss the call. You were designed as the receiver. Let me say that again, slowly, because I need it to land before we go forward. You are not someone who was supposed to hear the call and has been failing at it. You are not a person who keeps missing something they should have caught by now. You are, at your core, a receiver. Built for it, wired for it. The sensitivity you carry, the longing that has never fully gone away no matter how hard you have tried to manage it, the way certain things land in you deeper than they land in others, the ache you feel in the gap between where you are and where something inside you insists you are supposed to be. These are not problems. These are evidence of design. Think back to what we uncovered in the first part of this video. We established that God has never stopped speaking, that the still small voice is constant and patient and does not compete for your attention because it has never needed to. We established that the decline effect is real, that your reception frequency was buried under decades of engineered noise, and that this is not a spiritual failure but a measurable, reversible condition. And now, in the light of both of those truths, the full picture becomes visible. The sensitivity was always intentional. The ache was always pointing somewhere real. The gap you have felt between your current life and the life something inside you insists is possible was never a taunt. It was a compass. I want to speak directly to something now, something that has been living in you quietly, underneath everything else we have talked about today. The thought that arrives in the stillness and says, what if I do everything right? What if I clear the static? What if I sit in the silence and nothing comes through? What if the problem is not the noise? What if the silence is not static but absence? That thought is not discernment. That is the wound talking. The wound that formed in the seasons of reaching. The wound that grew in the long nights of carrying questions with no visible answer. The wound that learned, slowly and quietly, to interpret the delay as distance. And I want to speak to that wound, not with dismissal, not with bright reassurance, but with the steadiness of someone who understands what it costs to keep reaching, when reaching felt like nothing was reaching back. The still, small voice does not arrive on schedule. It does not perform under pressure. It does not respond to the sheer force of wanting it badly enough. It arrives in the cleared space, in the receiver that has been prepared, and when it does, you will recognize it immediately. Not because it will be dramatic, because it will feel like something you have been trying to remember your entire life. You were built for that recognition. Chosen one, I want to tell you who you are now, not who you have been performing as, not the identity assembled from what the world has needed from you, who you actually are. You carry perception that the people around you often cannot access. You sense things before they become visible. You have always known, at some level, when something was true or not true, when a situation was what it appeared to be or something else entirely. That sensitivity, the one that has sometimes felt like too much, like you feel too deeply in a world that does not always have room for depth, that is not a flaw in your design. That is the architecture of a receiver. You carry a voice that has not yet spoken at full volume because the static has been too loud, because the receiver has been partially buried, because you have been managing and surviving and holding everything together, and there has not been enough quiet for what is forming inside you to fully take shape. But it is there. It has always been there, and it is not for you alone. It is for the people who will be standing in the same fog you are standing in right now, who will need someone who has come through it to show them that the call is real and the silence was never what they thought it was. You carry the ability to see through what is performed and recognize what is real, not as arrogance, as assignment. And you carry something that changes the rooms you walk into, not in a dramatic way. In the way that your presence when the receiver is clear and the static is down is rare and needed and felt by people even when they cannot name what they are feeling. This is not who you are becoming. This is who you already are. The call has been going out for you because of all of this, because you were built for it, because the receiver was always yours, because what is trying to reach you is not a general broadcast. It is specific, personal, precisely encoded, addressed to you by name, containing what you need for exactly the next step of where you are going. The static is clearing, and what arrives when it fully clears will not surprise you. It will feel like remembering. I want to take a moment before we close to let everything settle. You came into this video carrying something, maybe quiet, maybe deeply held, the belief that the silence you had been experiencing meant something was wrong, that the line had gone somewhere, that somehow you were outside the circle of what everyone else seemed to be receiving. What you understand now is different. The transmission never stopped. The receiver was buried, not broken, not gone, buried under a specific, measurable, reversible weight of noise. And the longing you have carried, the ache, the reaching, the gap that would not close no matter what you filled it with, those were not evidence of spiritual emptiness. They were evidence of a receiver still oriented toward its signal, still straining toward the frequency, still doing exactly what it was designed to do. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not someone who cannot hear. You are someone whose receiver is being restored, and what is about to come through when it is clear is going to feel like arriving somewhere you have always been trying to get home to. Now, I want to pray with you. If prayer is not your language, simply receive what I am about to speak. Let it land where it needs to land. Let it settle into the places that have been waiting for something to arrive. We come to you right now, not with perfectly arranged words, not with the performance of faith we have sometimes offered when we were not sure you were listening, but exactly as we are, carrying the weight we have carried, carrying the questions we have not yet been given the answers to, carrying the hope that has sometimes gone thin, but has never completely gone out. We thank you that the call has never stopped. We thank you that your patience has outlasted every season of our noise, that you did not move when we could not hear you, that you did not interpret our distraction as rejection or our reaching as insufficient, that you held your frequency steady through all of it and waited. We thank you for every transmission that got through, for every 3 a.m. stirring that would not let us sleep, for every unexpected peace that arrived in a season that had no business feeling peaceful, for every door that closed before we walked through it, and every word from a stranger that landed like it had been sent. We receive now what we did not have the framework to hold when it first arrived. You see every moment we sat with questions and heard nothing and stayed anyway. You see the faithfulness in the small moments, the ones no one else noticed, and we barely noticed ourselves. You see what has been forming in the long seasons of waiting, the depth, the character, the capacity to carry what is coming. You see all of it, and you do not count the noise against us. We are seen. Right now, we release the belief that your silence was absence. We release it. We release the identity of the person who cannot hear, the story we have been quietly rehearsing about being too distracted, too far gone, too late. We release it. We release the wound that formed in the waiting, the belief that we were somehow the exception to your faithfulness. We release it. We release every layer of noise we have used to fill the space where your voice lives, the scrolling, the busyness, the managing, the performing. We release it. We release the fear of sitting in the stillness and finding nothing. We release it. We release the old story that says we have missed too much to receive what is still available for us. We release it. And we release the exhaustion of trying to force our way into clarity when what was needed was simply to clear the interference. We release it. Now we activate what is already present. We activate the seer in the chosen one, watching this right now, the one who perceives what others cannot, whose perception was never destroyed, only buried. We speak to that perception now, and we say, rise. We activate the voice, the one with something forming that has not yet found its full expression, and we clear the path for what has been waiting to come through. We activate the truth carrier, the one who has always known the difference between what is real and what is performed, and we give permission for that knowing to be trusted again, to be spoken, to be lived. We activate the light bearer, and we declare that what is being restored here is not a private experience, it is an assignment. What rises in you rises to serve. Cover what is being rebuilt. Cover it from premature exposure, from the voices that would diminish it before it has gained its strength, from the self-sabotage that arrives when breakthrough is close. What has been cleared, let nothing bury it again. What has been lifted, let nothing pull it back down. And now we declare, I am the chosen one who hears. I was built for reception. The call is active and I am aligned. The static is clearing and the signal is coming through. What has been transmitted for me has not expired. The silence was never absence. The waiting was never abandonment. I receive now what was always meant for me, in the stillness, in the trust, in the quiet knowing that the frequency was always mine. It is done. It is sealed. We receive it. In Jesus' name. Amen. Chosen one, if something in this video reached you today, I want you to type the word "here" in the comments right now. Not for me, for yourself, as a declaration that the receiver is coming back online, that you are ready. If you feel called to explore the 7-minute practice I shared today, the link to the Genius song is in the description and in the pinned comment below. $39 for this community only. Nowhere else. Take your time. There is no pressure here, only an open door for those who feel called to walk through it. And if someone comes to mind right now, someone who has been sitting with the belief that God went quiet, someone who has been reaching and coming up empty and quietly starting to wonder if something is wrong with them, would you share this video with them? You may be the transmission that finally gets through. The call is active, and you were always built to hear it.